Welcome back into Climbing the Summit podcast, where we talk about your personal climb to your personal summit. A couple of days ago, we had Shailia Stephens on talking about her journey to her personal summit. And there were so many good little pieces in there that I just didn't know which pieces to take out to give to you guys. So what I did was this episode specifically is her talking about thought. I also dropped in Dicken Bettinger. He is talking about the thought factory and a little bit more substance about thought. I think it is a beautiful explanation that Shailia gives of thought and how it interacts and plays in our life. I think it's something that you'll take a lot of benefit and joy out of. Thank you for taking the time to listen. If you find it useful or helpful, please share.
So one of the first things that I saw in the three principles was the principle of thought, Danny. So I was at a seminar in Oslo, in Norway, and Linda and George Pransky had come to speak there.
Favorites.
They're amazing, and it was really slowed down. That was number one. It was so slow. I never heard two people talk slower in my life until that point.
I remember first hearing it was the same. It was like, why are they talking so slow?
Yeah, because they're slowed down to the speed of actual life, right? And they're so calm. And George was telling us about the principles, and he said something on the first day, and it was something like, one of the most stressful things we can do as human beings is to be thinking about ourselves all the time and how we're doing in the world. And I was sitting in the seats and I heard that. It hit me like a lightning bolt. And I took it with me into the evening before the next day of the seminar. And the next day, George asked us to let them know what we had seen. And I raised my hand and I stood up and I said, George, that thing you said yesterday, I said, I'm doing that all day, every day, thinking about myself and how I'm doing in the world. So the principle of thought just says we think. Now, what I was thinking was a lot of worrisome, insecure things about myself all the time. And by putting my attention on that thinking, I was bringing that thinking to life in the form of stress and pressure and overwhelm.
Person in the world has a thought factory inside of them. I had not mentioned thought factories. She began to realize the truth that we live in the world of thought. I can't tell you what, it's amazing to me what happens to any human beings when they realize that for themselves, because hearing it doesn't do it. You have to begin to really realize, oh, I am a thinker and I do live in the world of thought, and it's normal to experience whatever it doesn't even it's not saying you shouldn't feel that. It's not saying you have to stop feeling something or stop thinking something. Just understand. You know what happens when we become more understanding toward ourselves? We relax. You know what happens when we relax? We have less thinking on our mind. You know what happens when we have less thinking on our mind? You have more love, more happiness, more peace, more.
What I started to do, or how that drip started happening for me, was I came home from that seminar and I would sit here at my desk and I would be working on my business and I would just notice, oof, there's that thinking I'm doing about myself and how I'm doing in the world again, right? And in the past, I would just put my attention on it and then feel the stress of that and feel the pressure, and then I'd work harder and do more. But then I thought, no, George said that that's stressful and that's been the thing weighing on my shoulders, so I'm not going to do that anymore. So I just did this, like, you can't see it in the podcast, but I just turned my head away from that thinking and came back to the present moment. every single time I noticed it. And that has not changed in the, gosh, that was in 2015, early May. What is now 23, 8 years later? It's the same thing that I do on any given day. If I notice I'm got my hands and my attention on my stressful thinking, I just turn my attention back to the present moment. And that's the principle of thought. Yeah.